If I can interrupt for just a minute, Chris, it's now about 8:20. What should we do?
Do you have a question in the back?
Maybe open it up for questions.
There were 2 or 3 hands up here.
Sorry, I came in late, but enjoy the conversation. I think that if you believe in one religion, this does not mean that you cannot look at other religions and need to disagree here with you. Because first, I do not think that a continent is a hook for a religion. It depends on the approach towards the religion. In the beginning, I think religion is part of education. The parents have their religion, and it's normal that the child is brought up with the religion of the parent, because it's the education. But there comes a certain age, like, I cannot now say a number, like maybe 15, 16, high school, and I expect from a gifted child an education towards gifted children that they're educated towards critical thinking. This is an important component to education for me. And the education towards critical thinking should include the critical thinking towards religion, towards spirituality as well. And I have been brought up in that way. I'm European, and in Europe, religion is a subject in high school. It's taught like history, like geography. Where in the curriculum, we learn about all religions. And doing that, nobody changes religion. So I do not see this as a danger, being exposed to other religions, to people with different backgrounds, that the child wakes out of the religious tradition of the family. I would rather see the opposite happening. If you are, and I experience this here a lot, that people from a certain religion tend to make friendship with people of the same religion and not with people from other religions. Many people get to know each other at church, for example. This is where many people here make friends. I observe that. So I do not know about statistics or numbers. But I think that if you talk about the education of gifted children, this should be part of education. I know it cannot be because of the Constitution, but somehow this is very, very controversial because the United States allows the freedom of religion, and I think it's one of the very few countries in the world where you can practice any religion. And on the other side, the religion is not a topic at school.
So you think it's our obligation, you're saying, as parents, to provide a religious education for our
No,
kids?
it's not an obligation, but I think that religion is part of the education, or not being religious can also be part of the education. It's normal that parents or two people who get married, they have kind of an idea how they're going to educate their child. In my family, I live with, my wife is a different religion than me. And it works. So,
So what do you do in a situation where the parents don't have religion? So they either left the faith, whether the parents came at a young age, they came to America, they sort of abandoned whatever the faith was they were raised in. It sounds like a lot of what we talk about is start with the foundation, train your son or things, and then you can develop spiritually. But if you have two parents in different faiths, or one atheist and one really on the fence, agnostic, where do they even start? What are the questions that you would recommend parents like that, or parents that have abandoned their religion, just doesn't work for them here? What are the questions they should be asking themselves?
This is going to sound silly, but there's a fabulous website called BeliefNet
where you can go. Has anyone ever done that before, where you plug in answers to all of these different questions and it gives you a sense of where you might belong, what kind of a community? And it can come up as any of the page represented here and then thousands more.
What if they both come up with different things? The mom and dad.
And you have to go to Unitarian University.
I set you up. I set you up.
What if I answer all the questions? There's your list, right?
Well, in all honesty, I didn't come up first as a Unitarian University.
There are camps. There are camps out there for secular children or children with different backgrounds, diverse backgrounds, like mixed camps. So there's a camp quest, and children go there in the summer. They talk about ethics and justice, talk about accepting diversity, people of different faiths, being educated about different faiths, and also to learn how to articulate that, just because you are not a believer doesn't mean you don't have any morals, you don't get babies at home, drink puppies' blood. You can articulate that because there's such a stigma out there. Too much, go ahead.
Chris, I'm curious, as far as if I understood your question, was suppose your child begins to ask you about God, and neither you or your partner, your husband, feel like you're able to answer that.
Or you have a particular leaning in one way or another, so you still have to answer the question. And you can sort of, I would say, dodge it by saying, well, there are many different beliefs. But if you have, so my eldest, so he's 8, or he'll be 8, so he's 6, said, I want to study every single one. Let's go. Bring out the books. Tell me about all the religions. I want to learn about all of them so I can pick one. There's also this concept of picking one in a household where there isn't a tradition or a ritual. Got to pick one. I got pressure. This kid wears a cross. This kid wears Jewish stuff. What am I? I want to know what I am, where I fit in. Again, these are kids who have a problem fitting in sometimes. Yeah. Already, they don't fit in. So when you have a whole bunch of kids in class wearing crosses, and they're talking about Christmas, and they're talking about church, it's just another example of not fitting in. So they come home and say, I want to pick one so I can fit in to teach me everything I need to know.
They can form now, but what I see in high school is the deep thinkers, the really bright, deep thinkers, right? The ones who've been educated, from wherever they get educated from, they think differently, they think for themselves independently. They walk into the building, especially non-believer kids, right? Walk into the building, okay, everybody has to stand up and pledge under God. And so the kids been learning about government and First Amendment, and then the kids say, okay, well, you equating being a good American citizen with believing in a deity. I don't believe in a deity, so that means I'm not a good American. You're marginalizing me. And so the teenager would be combined with hormones and rebellion, right? So they would sit down, everybody else stands up, and either a teacher would go to talk to the kid, or some kids would say, why are you doing that? You get detention, or whatever, you've been disrespectful, so they get that kind of bullying.
Well, but I would just like to say, I mean, because there's bad religion, doesn't mean that there's nothing to religion. There's bad medicine, but you take your children to a doctor. There's bad science, but you train your child. I mean, you can always find examples of bad anything, and whatever bad, the wrong hand you take them to the wrong piano teacher, and they've taught them the wrong technique, and now they've got to relearn all of that. And I think that, your example, I think is to start honestly. I mean, it becomes a journey that you can share with your child. You can say, well, I grew up in a Buddhist home, and this is what my parents believed. And you tell them that, but then your dad, he grew up in a Muslim home. And so when we got married, we didn't feel like that we would fit in either religion, and so we didn't have a thing. But you still, I mean, you can go on that journey with them because it's a journey of asking, is there a God? Why not take that journey with them? I mean, you do it within science or in art. If they showed an interest in art, you may know nothing about art. You may never have been taken to an art museum as a child. But they're interested. So when your child starts saying, oh, I want to look at them all, well, why don't you help them look at them? And it's also, and you share in their journey and their questions, and you can share honestly with them what you think or what you don't.
I think with gifted children, you've got to go to the level of just going right down to the truth. Obviously, to the age-appropriate but they're going to ask questions. And as parents, if you don't know the answer, then you'll have to find them. It'll be a challenge. You'll have to come to a first decision between the two, heads of the family, which direction do we guide the child. But then be absolutely truthful about it, because that child will be able to understand it, because him or her is gifted with that much of intellect.
I have a question. Smart children, very curious, trying to absorb as much information as they can, often stumble upon information, like let's say science as an example, that may conflict with what their religious parents believe. So I'm curious from each of the different perspectives, what advice would you give religious parents who have smart kids who are asking questions that have controversial answers? And I'll maybe just pick on the big controversial evolution, creationism topic. So if you have a child who's watching a Nova episode about the formation of the Earth, or reading books about, evolution or things like that, and they ask questions to the parents, and the parents believe in creationism, for example, what advice would you give to those parents on how to respond to those children who are asking those kinds of questions with controversial answers?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. You're not that parent who's the creationist parent with the Darwinian child, but it's.
I'm asking if, in the case of a religious parent.
I mean, I guess what I wanted to find out is your question really about creationism versus Darwinism and how you deal with that in a Judeo-Christian tradition? I don't know where where the Sikh traditions come in, if that's a challenge or not. Or is it this gentleman's question, which is that the child is questioning authority, that the child is questioning tradition, and it could come up in any sort of context.
The question is more, I'm kind of trying to leave myself out of the question. It's more about reconciliation of different belief systems with scientific perspectives.
So,
and then how you explain to a young child like under 10 who hears things that conflict with one another, how do you help the child reconcile what they should believe?
Yeah, I don't have 10-year-olds. I have a 5-and-a-half-year-old and a 3-year-old, so you'll have to wait 5 years. I'll just say, the way I answer it with 18-year-olds is to then begin, if we want, we'll sit down, we'll study the first chapter of Genesis, the world's created in 7 days, and we'll begin to look at that as through some very important literary tools. It's a much more sophisticated way of looking, in my mind, of looking at the text. And I believe that the text operates on many different levels. There's a literal read of the text, and then there's understanding the literary techniques that the biblical author had at their disposal to convey meaning. And we might try to then distill that there are grander principles than the details of creating the world in 7 days. And that we don't need to sort of match up, in my mind, those 7 days to being 7 millennia or each, a billion years for each day or something. But that when it comes down to it, that chapter of Genesis is trying to tell us that there was a creator, and that the world was created through order. And the other thing that's very useful for a child who believes in Darwin there is that everything happens almost through division. Further on, if you look at the structure of the days, the first 3 days match up with the last. Days 1, 2, 3 match up with 4, 5, and 6. It's a very logical order and progression. And you can find these grander concepts that would be actually probably very much equivalent to how Darwin would explain evolution, that you had to have single-cell organisms that multiplied and divided, et cetera, et cetera. So on a sophisticated way, I can read Genesis 1 and perfectly embrace Darwin. And so in the Jewish tradition, Maimonides will say that if science disagrees with Scripture, we need to adjust our understanding of Scripture. And that works for me. And I can have that conversation maybe with an 18, maybe as a 22-year-old, but not with a 10-year-old. I don't know how to do that.